Everything is chaos.
Hi, I'm Cass.
I'm Caleb.
Welcome to Rooted.
So it's a new year. We're normally not going to date these as we're talking in them, but it's the first.
Yeah.
It is.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's 2026. And we talked about the void recently, the time between Christmas and New Year's, and how it's kind of I was going to say a culmination of different things, but it's really a lack of most things, I think, right? Like we talked about the months, potentially months leading up to Christmas, how there's the planning and the stress and all the things that go into the holidays. And then Christmas comes and leaves so quickly that you're kind of left in this emotional free fall, afterwards. And then, like, something's coming soon. You have New Year's Eve and what have you, and whether you go out and celebrate that or whatever, it's like the next agenda item, but it's a week away. And so you have this just waiting, right? Well, now we're in a season that I think is arguably worse for people's mental health
Than the void?
Than the void. The void is short-lived. It's 6 days, 7 days. So I was talking to my buddy in Virginia back when we lived there, name irrelevant, and he was saying that, like, after New Year's Day, when it's cold and snowy and stuff, he gets, like, really depressed. And he loves the Christmas season, right? He's all about, like, decorating and doing all the traditions and, like, having that family time. But there's something about when New Year's is closed out, when New Year's Day is done, there's no milestone left in the winter. You're not a week away from some holiday. You don't have this big thing the whole country is celebrating coming up that you're, like, looking forward to. Now it's just cold and dark and wet outside with, like, no light at the end of the tunnel. And, like, I get you're from the north, and so you look at this very differently, but for a lot of people...
When someone from the south is saying it, I surely am.
Well, my point, I think, in Josh's point in it cold. Is it's just different. It's a time of year that almost forces introspection. Mm-hmm. It forces some degree of isolation. If you're not careful, it allows your hands and mind to be very idle. Yeah. And I think, especially in our society where we live in distraction culture, right? We doom scroll, we shop online, we're on screens, we're constantly filling our head with noise. Mm-hmm. And this time, when, like, our part of the world kind of shuts down for the most part, happens, how do you escape it? Yeah. Right? If you don't have a very strong relationship in your faith, if you're not having a goal, like constantly getting in the Word, if you're just kind of floating through life at this time of year, it can be really
even
difficult.
If you have a goal, right? And even if you are strong in your faith, I think that's an even bigger distraction, right? It's funny, really, because we go into the new year every year with some resolution or something. I'm gonna read the whole Bible. I'm gonna lose 20 pounds. I'm gonna whatever it is, right? And it's a place for us to start fresh. But for a lot of people, mm-hmm. It's actually a friend of mine recently. She had lost her fiance, and she had put a pretty long post up on the internet about that entire year. Mm. And she had said something in there that kind of stuck with me about how her time with that person got left in 2025. And now, well, most people they're making the resolutions and going forward into the next year. The memories live in 2025 for her. Just like our memories of our daughter. It's all of it. We all have these areas in time that are frozen. So when it's fresh, it hurts. But then when the holidays show up, it hurts.
Right.
And then when the holidays pass, there's this reminder that the next year is coming, and every memory you had was in the past. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard, whether you're a believer or not a believer, or in the moments where you want to treasure the idea of a family dinner, or even if you don't have a family anymore, the memories, the ornaments, whatever it is that you hold on to in traditions, there's something that becomes regular in someone's life at some point, right? And people who are around for those moments are attached to them, regardless of what their celebrations look like, or their New Year's. And so when you start to look back at how you spent all those times and all the rushing and all of that, and then you get into these quieter moments, I've learned to actually have gratitude for the silence and the forward thinking and saying, okay, I'm ready to leave that memory in that moment, because I know I actually can take these memories as far forward as I want to, you know? So I think that there's just a piece that is at grasp if we let it after time. You know, certainly my mother passed in November of 21, right? So by January of 22, I was not in a good headspace. By January,
4 years.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
you said something there that, and I think it was bigger. I think it had a bigger impact than you realize. When people have traumatic events, it is frozen in time. And most people that I have counseled or spoken with or interacted with in the realm of grief or loss, people don't move on. Yeah. They attach themselves to the moment in time, right? And they try to stay there. Yeah. Like life is continuing, right? But they are refusing to. But the way that you said that was like, you come to a point where you realize you're not anchored to a time, but you have permission to pick up what you have of those memories and carry them forward, which allows you to not stay that way. Right. I have a really, like a long-standing friend of the family who lost their child to SIDS back in 1990. And there was a pretty long section of her life where I think she was still in 1990. Yeah. Like from a trauma standpoint, you know? And I don't know that she ever truly fully healed from that. Right. I don't know if any of us really, like, what is true healing, right? But I think that a lot of people don't realize, like, pick up what you can carry if it's not too heavy and carry it with you. Yeah. You know, like our daughter was born on Cinco de Mayo. Like, that's not a holiday we celebrate. No. But every Cinco de Mayo that came after that made me sad. Now that day somehow had an anchoring that could pull me down. Right. Right? And instead, like, we have lived in a life where when we feel like talking about our daughter, we just do. When we feel like being sad about our daughter, we just do. Right. We're not pinned into the calendar with some thumbtack where we're forced grief this day and forced celebration that day. Like, we carry her with us. Her urn, like, is right there. You know, like, yeah. I don't know. There's a permission that we often refuse to give ourselves. Yeah. To keep going, to live for the people we still have, and even if it's no one, to live for the Lord. And it's a hard place to get to. Yeah. Well, that's really it, right? Is once you get through the stages of grief and really going through your mind of, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to them? How am I going to get through this loss? How am I going to move on to tomorrow with any thought, decision, laugh, memory, anything without the person who I would call about it, right? The counsel. Or with, right, or whatever. Obviously, with our daughter, she was a baby, so that wouldn't have been somebody I was going to call. But sure. Even every Christmas, that's a stocking that would have been hanging. That's not, right? There's always pieces that you can what if through, but then when you start to be able to breathe a little when the shower, or when the crying is only in the shower and not all throughout your whole day, there's an ability to pick up those memories and take them with you, as you said. But even if you have no one, you said, if nothing else, then serve the Lord. And God specifically tells us
that all of the trials and the trauma and all the things that we go through are something we should be rejoicing in. And it's so hard to say to somebody when they've just lost someone. And there's no, and I am praying for peace for you. And when I say that I'm praying for peace for somebody, I mean, I'm literally in that moment. If I messaged it to them, I put my phone down, I'm praying, right? But that peace isn't that God would give them peace, because God's already given them the peace. They have to be willing to accept it. There's an ability to stop and go, okay, this feels terrible. My person is gone. Whatever it is that is causing grief. And it's not just loss, right? There's so many forms of grief that come, and in the holidays, that's what gets highlighted. But
well, in the holidays too, there's you can grieve a living person, right? You can grieve a relationship you no longer have,
right?
Whether it's a failed marriage or someone you've had to remove from your life, or someone that's removed you from their life, or parents who don't have custody of their children. There's so many examples of grief that don't include loss, but are pretty much all applicable here.
Right. Loss of what we know on this earth regularly, which is where we get tradition from, right? We form these amazing memories with our children and parents and family, and we create traditions that get passed down so that when we're gone, now our children's children have them. But we get into the Januaries of our life and go, okay, well, now what? The tradition was I was going to be a new me. I'm going to lose the 20 pounds. I'm going to read 50 books this year. Whatever it is that we decide we're going to do to change ourselves, if you're still holding on to the grief and moving forward with it without coming to some ounce of peace with it, and it only comes from giving it to God. And when I say that, it's not pretending like it didn't happen. At least once a week, I have a moment where, even saying it, I come to tears about my mom, usually. But, sorry. Sitting in this room, half of the things that she purchased in our memories, I have a candle from when I was a kid sitting up there that she got. There's nothing wrong with being sad. Yeah. But I am also so full of joy for a multitude of reasons, right? She, as a person, gets to be completely free of pain now. And not everyone loses somebody who's dying of cancer, so it doesn't always apply, right? But I think that there's an ability to be happy that you got the time at all, that you have something to grieve.
Yeah, oh yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it really does. I mean, there's an old adage to that, right? Like, it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all.
Right.
And it's almost cliche how much that's used, but it's true.
Right.
I didn't have but a week in my firstborn child, but what did that week give to me? Right. It taught me a version of love that I didn't know existed. Like, I knew the love of a parent. I knew, not as a parent, right, but the love of parents to me. I knew the love of a companion, right? But holding a child that looked like me for the very first time, a new part of your soul opens up, and not that I was some bad person, but I was not the most lovey-dovey, I'm going to hold my baby girl person most of my life,
Right.
And it did something to me. It changed the trajectory of my life to allow me to be the more gentle, loving, reflective, whatever version of me exists today. That change in course started around the time I met my daughter.
Right.
And her time here was short, but the impact of that love was lifelong. And so while it may not have been one of your parent who you've known your entire life, who gave you, bestowed wisdom upon you and taught you right from wrong, my daughter herself did nothing intentionally to do anything for me, right? But God uses all things for good, not just some things. And I think that's really it. Even in tragic, sudden, unexpected loss, God will still use it for good. I was talking with somebody earlier this morning on one of the social media platforms, and they were saying, they're talking about an event that involved sudden tragic loss. And they were talking about them coming to peace with it and how much closer to God it brought them. And I was like, well, look at that. Even if you can't see the good that came out of that, you sharing the story right now has filled my cup and everyone else listening to this. So, like, even if it's just this right now today, which it's not because you're talking about it on online spaces all the time,
right,
is being used for good. And I think that's, and I don't want to digress too far, but I think that's a huge misconception, especially from the non-believer community. And I can say that with some degree of certainty because that was me.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah.
People would be like, oh, well, God uses all things for good. And I would take that to mean that God makes everything happen on purpose and it's all good. Right? Like that a good God wouldn't allow bad things to happen kind of thing.
I mean, you were that way when we lost our daughter.
Right.
When Emerson passed away, it was like two different belief sets sitting on
I was
the
like,
porch.
this is the God?
This is what, right.
This is the thing that you devote your life to?
Yeah.
Just let this happen. Right? And that's the misconception. I mean, like, theoretically, could God just stop all bad things from happening? Sure, in theory, he could. But then he would have just created us to be in heaven. Right. There would be no testing ground. Right. There would be no get to know me first. I don't want another Lucifer. Right. Get to know me and know who I am. Know my character. Feel my love. Right. Come to a point where you choose to love me. Right. Coming to a point where you choose to love God, unless you were saved at like 8 months old, your life has had some reasons that point you to needing him. Yeah. I know in my life, like I used this example the other day, the pawns on the chessboard of my life slowly either died or got removed until the only thing left in front of me that I could see was the king. Yeah. You know, and like sometimes it takes that for you to choose to love God. Like God loves you regardless. So going back to what I was saying, the misconception is all things that happen are good in God's eyes. That's not it. It's we choose to do dumb things. And you know, other people's decisions make bad things happen, and bad happens constantly, 24/7. Somewhere in the world, something terrible is happening. God's promise in that is that he will find a way to take your horrific circumstance and use the bad for good elsewhere. Yeah. Not that the situation itself was inherently good. Right. And that's the tripping point. Right. Something horrible can happen and he can go, I have 36 ways that you can use that to positively impact other people. Right. Make sure that other people don't fall in a similar whatever, even if it's the grief. Like, I can tell people who have lost their child how not to grieve. Yeah. You know? And not that, like, I did anything super crazy, but the way I grieved wasn't healthy. Right. And so when I meet that father who's going through it, I can say, hey, man, from lived experience, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but from lived experience, let me tell you 6 things you shouldn't do for the next 3 years. Right. You know? And that is God using those things for good, in my mind.
Yeah. There's it's funny, almost. And I mean, obviously, it's not in this situation. But in any other circumstance, believer or non-believer, someone will take something bad that happens. Let's use an anecdote of mine, right? I personally, when I was very young and stupid, decided to have too many drinks, get into a car, drive, and crash my car. No one died. Everyone was fine. I went to jail. That's how it went. But that lesson in my life was I did something bad happened. I learned from it. It refined me. Now, if someone had died or something else happened on the other end of that, I suppose there's a larger spider trail or a spider web here for connection on what other refinement was happening around me. But that's one bad thing that made me decide to never ever do that again. It took me one time of hearing, seeing, experiencing how bad it could be to go, oh, I shouldn't do that anymore. And obviously it took a lot of growth since then, and I'm a completely different person now. But if I can learn from that, why can't I learn from any other bad thing that's happening to me, right? And, well, that happening isn't the same as someone losing their life. Sure. Because our daughter, obviously, passing away of SIDS is not the same as a bad decision, but they both caused grief. One form of grief is easier to learn from once you're able to take accountability. In some forms of grief, there's no accountability to take because it just happened. My mom just got cancer. Our daughter just died. Our other daughter, who's perfectly living, suffered through cancer for years. There is still grief in all these different forms, and what we take from it and how we learn to value other people and ourselves. My value on who I was changed when my mom passed. I changed all of what I thought was important in life. And I went over a lot of that already in a different episode, but I think that it's not logical to say something that happens to anyone is for one specific purpose.
Oh, of course not.
And I think that's where people get caught up in the grief, right? It's a fallacy to say that my mom died so that I could know more about myself and perform.
You're putting God and God's plan in a box when you map it out so linearly.
Right. He knows the effects on everyone who she was ever around.
Sure.
Right? And he also knew what she was going to have to go through. Right? He knew the pain that she was in. And we don't know what Emerson's future would have been.
Right.
We don't know what our daughter would have lived with or not lived with, or how her life would have turned out. We have no idea. So in every little single piece of grief that we've had to experience, there's a different way to rejoice and thank God. I thank God that one of my children, though she's gone now, didn't ever die a horrible death. Never had to experience losing her parents.
She never had a sad day.
She never had a sad day. Right. There's so many good things.
Yeah.
And I know that she is with the Lord. And my mother, and the way that she tried to fight through all of the cancer, she got to have a moment of saying, okay, I'm ready for this. She, Emerson, we weren't prepared for, but she didn't feel any pain. My mother was able to prepare, there's every situation is different, and every person's story is different, and every ripple effect is different, and how it affected me then affected you, how Emerson's loss affected you then affected me. There's so many connecting pieces that we all seem to forget that highlight the value of life and getting to be here. Because if nobody ever died and we never felt loss, then what are we doing?
Right. What would be the value of
What would be the value of anything?
Right.
And that's easy to say, and I feel like it's probably been said 100 times, so it's certainly not some big revelation. But when you first lose somebody, it's not why'd they have to die. It's why'd they have to die right now.
Right.
Why did it have to happen in this moment? And that's where you have to be able to say, okay, there's a bigger picture here that I don't understand.
Right.
God's timeline is not linear. There's so many other pieces, and the physical world we're upset about is not it.
Right.
It's not the end. It's not actually it. Well, we can preserve them in time. The picture of her is behind me up on the wall.
Yeah.
She is preserved in many ways around here, but I know spiritually she's not gone.
Right.
She's not right here, but she's not gone. And I think that we have to remember that every single person goes through grief in some way, shape, or form, because at the end of the day, everyone does die. And God's intention is for that to refine us. Right. If we look at it and go, how can I improve from this? How can I do something better tomorrow than I did yesterday? So rather than saying, because it's a new year, I'm going to be different tomorrow, you say, because I just went through this, I'm going to be better tomorrow.
And I think the source of being better tomorrow, and almost all of the things that you just said, it all comes back to faith. That's something I was so blind to for so long. Like, how do you know what would make you better, truly better by definition? You gotta get to a place where you're in tune with the Spirit, where you have a relationship with the Lord, because what I thought was better for me 3 years ago is not what God thought was better for me, right? And like his ways are above our ways, his understanding is above our understanding. So to be better, truly better, comes with an understanding we don't have, which means we have to lean on him to see where to go next, what to do next, how to change our ways. You know, it's interesting when you said, when you were starting to go down like the grief ripple, and you're like, you know, the way that you grieved affected me and the way I grieved affected you. But like I went past that, right? And I'm like, okay, just in my own lane, the way that I grieved made me drink to an extent that like should probably be in a record book. The way that I drank caused this, and that caused this, and that caused that, and now I have these testimonies. I have these testimonies not only about loss, but about addiction, about all the things, and I've covered them on here before, but like people have been blessed by that. I've been able to share that with people and it's helped them, you know, on a pretty frequent basis, honestly, now like with social media and everything else. And so like you can't say, well, you know, I lost this so that this, but like when you look at how all of it, just in my one little branch of the tree, has affected, and how that's affected others, it's innumerable, it's immeasurable, and it's in all things, like, right? But when there's trauma, we kind of like put a magnifying glass on it, and we look at effects of things more, or maybe the opposite, we only look at how it affects us. But there comes a minute when you can kind of take a step back and look, even like your mom's journey. She had cancer for 7 years, 14 to 21, I think. Yeah.
I had to count those.
Think about the amount of people that were blessed by her fight.
Yeah.
You know, like the places that she went with Matt, and the faith, the hope, the boldness in her faith that she instilled in so many people. How many people did just her fight bless? Watching her go halfway down the coast, more than halfway down the coast, just to make sure that she could be a grandparent, even if that meant having her chemo mailed to Virginia from New York just to be there. Like, she modeled what being someone of true faith was in the face of certain soon death, right? The cancer that she had was not curable. They told her from the jump, there's no cure for this. And she didn't freeze herself in time in 2014 and start grieving death early. She said, okay, how do I live these next years and make them count? Yeah. And not just for me and my grandkids and my daughter and my husband, but for the Lord. Right? Like, I mean, they were going to like conferences, and people were like prophesying, and like they were in. She didn't have an ounce, at least externally, of like, you know, like she hit the gas for God. Like, that's crazy.
Well, so much so that she actually didn't do chemo for a while. Yeah. She's like, I'm giving it to God. Yeah. I was like, could you do the medicine? Could you do that, please? But I think that there's a piece of that is important, because, well, she was cognizant about, I mean, even when she was getting her chemo and her treatments and CAR T-cell therapies at Roswell Park, you know, they were staying in like Ronald McDonald House style places, and they were meeting new people, and they were taking the opportunities then to speak to complete strangers about their faith. And when you're with someone else's loved one who's also going through that same fight or something similar, there's something different about seeing faith in those people.
You're willing to listen a little different.
Right. And then there was a message there, really, for my mother at an event she had gone to, that was a thought of healing. And when she first told me that she had received this, when she was spoken over, I actually thought in that moment, oh, that's it, right? At some point, we're gonna lose her. And I had already known that because science,
hope,
right? But there was, of course, the hope, right? But my thought was complete healing, because before the cancer, she could barely walk with the way her knees were torn apart. And the only reason we even found the cancer was because she was supposed to get knee surgery, and to replace her knees, they said, oh, your labs look bad. And then, you know, here we are. But in every corner of that, she just had such big faith. And even though the faith that the healing would come wasn't exactly what she thought it was on this physical earth, it didn't change her faith.
Right.
In fact, after she had to have a double craniotomy and they pull her out of sedation, the first thing she did was signal for a pen so she could write "Speak Jesus." There's no bigger faith than that. When I come out of normal anesthesia,
and she wasn't just sedated. I mean, yes, but she was in a medically induced
right.
coma.
She was in a coma. Right. When I come out of normal anesthesia, that isn't even a thought, and I'm pretty much fine, other than some sickness. I can't imagine knocking on death's door.
Mm.
And they were poking around in her actual brain.
The kids had already said goodbye.
Right, you weren't supposed to let children in there, and they had let Elijah and Scarlett in there to say goodbye to her while she was out, because everyone thought that was it. And then seeing her come back from that actually started to change my mind about the healing, and I thought, oh my gosh. And then she went home and relearned to walk and all of these things, and then boom, like overnight, just gone. And on our wedding anniversary of all times. But I was so angry about that for so long, because I felt more tricked in the thought that I had decided already that healing means like real healing. Like she'll be okay in heaven, but like she's not going to be here. And then she's somewhat healed, but she got time. We got to talk to her. We got to see her. Right. And she got to go lay in her own bed for even a short time,
And hopefully I haven't embellished this in my head, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but she had an incurable cancer and went and did an experimental trial that she had to stop doing treatment to let her levels get to near fatal before they tried this last ditch effort.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, at the end of her life, her incurable cancer was gone.
I think it was subdued. I don't think that they had proven it was all gone. There was a lot more work to do. But what she died of wasn't actually the cancer. It was cardiac. Right. But that was because they had to put a pacemaker in because of the stress that the cancer put on her body. So essentially, you still could lead it back to the cancer, right? But today, even somebody had commented on something that I had put online about our previous podcast, and she had said that watching us as we've grieved, essentially,
because she's known us through
she's known us through all of this, has helped her a lot with a recent loss that she's had to deal with. And I don't pay attention as much to how the world might see us in our loss, the way that we conduct ourselves as we've progressed in our grief, as we've grown, right? It still serves as an example today, even though for me it was years ago, and I'm still grieving now, but it's one of those, remember after Emerson died and it got to a point where you start to question, am I saying it too much? Am I too sad in front of people?
Yeah.
Am I
just the Debbie Downer in the friend group?
Am I still, right, am I bringing up my dead baby too much? Yeah. And then it became, am I bringing up my mom? Even here in our home, I have it now sometimes where I'm like, oh, don't, Grandma got that. To the kids, sometimes I'm like, are they so tired of me being
kids are like, Grandma got everything.
Grandma got everything. Right. But on the flip side of that, people do still grieve long term as well at the same time, and they still kind of look to the people who were loud about it, I guess. I don't want to say I was loud about it, but maybe I wrote a book about it, so I suppose I was loud about it. But I didn't ever want a pity party, and that's kind of the irony, is even in grief, I tried to grieve right for the longest time. I tried to be the high honor roll student of grieving, if you will, and not bother people with my grief, and not do the wrong thing, and if I was coping the wrong way, or what I thought was coping the wrong way, which still was wrong, but there was other ways I was coping that I didn't know were coping mechanisms, like excessive
education.
Right. If I only pay attention
It's just
to work
distraction.
and school, I can't think about the fact that my mother is dead, right?
Sure.
And on the weekends, and the kids were off at their dad's, it was a gin and tonic, you know? And I think that we forget that even years down the road, people who know us, or people who get to know us, aren't necessarily in the same place in their grief 4 years from their grief, or
Sure.
10 years from their grief.
Right.
They might still be in 1990. And there is no right way to grieve. There's certainly wrong ways to grieve, but God knows our hearts, and God knows how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hold on to an awareness of it in the trauma, in the moment, and that's really what kind of got me over the hump of sadness, if you will. It went from, I didn't want to go to work, I didn't want to finish school, I didn't want to do anything. I parented, but outside of that, my children brought me joy, so there was that, but I didn't have any goals anymore. It was exist today the best you can, and when you get to go to bed, thank God for that.
Right.
That was where my happiness was, right? I think that we need to remember now, I suppose is my point, that we're still a witness to people. We're still an example to people. How we grieve now about something 4 years ago can still affect others.
Right.
It goes right into iron sharpens iron.
Something that really bothered me on my grief journey, and like something from reading your book, it put something into perspective. When we lived in Virginia, in Sedley, we had a pretty big house comparatively to the houses around us. And I would drive around and look at some of the houses that were like not in the same ballpark as ours, but like the ones that were like falling apart, but people lived in, right? Like there's like giant holes in the roof, and like it gave me this perspective. And I used to say, like, not everyone's version of Sedley is the same. You know what I'm saying? Like when I think Sedley, Virginia, I think my Sedley, Virginia, the one I had. Not necessarily the guy 5 miles down the road who's trying to patch the hole in his roof, and his house is falling apart all around him. His version of Sedley might look a lot different. And I think grief is looked at in a very similar way. Like, just because you both have been to Sedley don't mean your Sedley was the same.
Yeah.
Right? Just because like you've lost your mom doesn't mean that person's loss with their mom's the same. Or if you've lost a child, like I never say, oh yeah, I get it. I've been there too. Like even if our children pass from the same exact thing, the circumstances I'm sure were different.
Right.
I don't know. Our grief looks different, but society has like programmed us not to care about grieving. If you remember, when our child died, my job, which I was about to start, I believe at the time, was gracious enough to give me 3 days of bereavement leave.
Mm-hmm.
And on day 4, I was expected to be fully there.
Yeah.
And like 2 or 3 weeks later, I got fired for not being able to like learn quick enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey guys, I'm sorry, I really am. Like I want this job. I want to learn. My head's just not in it, man.
Yeah.
And well, we gave you 3 days bereavement leave. And like, not making this about me, that's societally, that's what we do.
Right.
And then when your friend has been sad for too long, part of you goes, okay, we still doing this?
Right.
How long have you been sad, bro?
Right.
Life goes on. So like, that's one aspect of it, is the timeline of grief and how your Sedley's not my Sedley.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We even grieving the loss of the same child that we both created.
Mm-hmm.
We grieved at different paces and in different seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something else, I grieved the loss of our daughter in every way I knew how. Right?
Yeah.
None of them were positive, but it was all of the typical responses to trauma. And I think people will say things like, well, you grieved, but you didn't deal with that properly, or you didn't grieve that fully or rightly, or like there's like a blue pill and a red pill. You're supposed to take one, but you pick the other, and it's that clear cut.
Mm-hmm.
It's always bothered me because I'm not studied in grief, right? I only have my lived experience, and I lost a lot of friends to like overdoses and stuff at a high school, but like, and like the typical like you lost your grandparents when you're a relatively young thing, but like my daughter was my real only major grief in a form of death, and so that's all I got. And so like when people tell you you're 2 years in and you're still sad, and they're like, well, maybe you haven't fully grieved this, maybe you didn't grieve this right.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that mean? Anyway, it gets me to a point where I'm like, you wrote an entire book on grief.
Yeah.
And it's not just, this is my grief, this is how I dealt with it, do this. Like, I watched you. I'd walk in your office, you have medical journals and psychological journals pulled up, and you're reading case studies on grief and how it affects us. So when someone says something like, you're not grieving properly, or you need to grieve right, or tries to put a timeline around grief, it bothers me, but I also admittedly come from a place of educational ignorance on it. I know you don't like me just like throwing stuff on you on here, but like, what say you, being that you actually have some formal, I did some like pastoral counseling classes or whatever, but it's so surface level. Your book dives into grief and what it does to you and really how you got through it. So like, what's your take on stuff like, how do you intertwine grieving properly, grieving right, timelines on grief, which is what the world says, with your faith and like what you've learned, not just through your experiences, but what you had to learn to put the book together. Like, I don't even fully know my question really, but like shed some light there on that trifecta.
Well, some of the medical journal reading was a mixture of me trying to heal through understanding what actually happened to my mother.
Yeah.
I still get pretty upset about her pacemaker not being calibrated. So I do a lot of, some of those medical journals were more me being able to do some deep dives on that as I was writing. But some of them are to make sure I wasn't crazy, right? In my thought process. And as I am trying to explore science at the same time that I'm exploring the Bible, I can easily see how they connect.
Sure.
Because of my faith. But I wanted to ensure that I wasn't writing anything outside of my purview that I couldn't back up.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, there's like maybe 2 actual medical journal citations in there. There's not, the rest of it is Bible verses. But the way that grief affects your mind, essentially, is a lot like any other experience that causes heightened emotion. Which, love does it to you, grief does it to you. You have a trauma response, but that also depends on what else you've been through. So then once I started to realize, actually, I was journaling, which is how the book kind of came to life. I wasn't writing for myself, which we've discussed in a different podcast as well, but I wasn't writing to publish. I was writing for myself. I apologize, I said that wrong. And then I realized that there is more to it that could be shared, right? And at the same time, I started to wonder if I was grieving properly. And so I sought therapy. And so in seeking therapy is when I actually learned quite a bit more. And I found that my grieving about my mother really wasn't just about my mother, which, giant surprise there in psychology, right? I had taken so many moments of my life that impacted me and had formed how I interact with people and therefore how I grieve. So, like the loss of Emerson, I might have seemed to you like I was almost cold. I was crying in the shower, but I wasn't out in the world acting like my daughter died. Right? I was going to work. By the loss of my mother, I ended up fired because I no longer could deal with all the other things I'd experienced. And then we, through a lot of digging and research, in trauma, your mind takes a piece of information that it knows to be true and makes it a fact, which is actually then a fallacy in anyone else's real life. So, because it leads back to a moment in time in the Navy where I was sexually assaulted. And that started to form how I grieved everything else. And that moment in time created a fact for me that all people weren't safe, right? All moments weren't safe. And all cancer kills people, or all babies that go to sleep don't wake up. We start to create illogical thought processes in our minds to almost help us feel better. Yeah. Because if it's all or nothing, then okay, well that makes me feel a little bit better about that, right?
And I think part of that's like fight or flight too, right? Right. I was listening to one of the gals from the agency today was live, and they were sharing something about how they lost their mother. Yeah. And it was at a young age, and it was in a house fire. Oh. And their husband is a big outdoorsman, fishes, camps, hunts. And she said when he comes home and his beard smells like campfire smoke, she goes into like an uncontrollable reaction. Yeah. And I think it's not just, and like what you said is true for sure, right? You say something's true, so your brain goes, oh, that's factual. Right. Now let's universally apply it. Right. But I think it becomes subconscious. It becomes a program. Like you're running a programming language that tells you, it's not like you're not making the choice. When she smells that campfire, she's not going, that sounds familiar. That smells familiar. How should I react? Right? It's a visceral reaction. Right. So are you alluding to potentially grieving properly is somehow either circumnavigating that or deprogramming that?
That goes back to the awareness, right? At no point right after the death of our daughter or right after the sexual assault or right after my mom's death could I have seen I'm having this emotion, which is affecting this thought, which is causing this action. And I think we talked about the emotion, thought, action triangle the other day, but it really does apply in so many places. And if you catch yourself on the emotion, the God-given emotions, we're supposed to have them, before you let it dye your thoughts. And I know that's hard to do because they feel very combined.
Thoughts and emotions are pretty close.
But if you can slow down, earlier, I had a moment where I said, hey, I don't love where the trajectory of this plan is going because I felt surprised by these 5 things. And I know that emotionally right now, I feel angry. I'm going to step over here, fix my thoughts about my anger. I'm going to come back to you. And I came back and we were fine because I knew I slowed down. Right. When someone dies, you don't slow down.
You either stop or you go 100 miles an hour.
Right. And there was a point where I was trying to not get out of bed, especially like the weekends when the kids were at their dad's house. I was not trying to get up. And that was then bordering on depression. But the other option was the 100 miles an hour. All I do is work, and go to school and clean the house and act like everything else is more important than life than what actually was important, which was to slow down and give it to God. Because when you slow down and you silence all of that, you can listen for God.
I was going to say neither of those options seemingly had anything to do with faith.
Right. And that's where that science and Bible combination intertwine, where I know that the science exists because God created it.
Sure.
But not everyone thinks that way. So in being able to step back and go, okay, well, look at it this way. We know scientifically we have emotion, we have thoughts, we have our mind, we have actions that we are in control of, regardless of what anyone believes in. Okay, so since we know that, you can slow down, you can harness your thoughts, and you can choose your actions based on them. Now, everyone's circumstance is different, and I do feel for those who are more alone in their grief. Because, well, it could feel alone at moments. When I lost my mom or we lost our daughter, I wasn't. I had children, I had you, I had my family, the rest of my family, and I'm not going to pretend like there's people who aren't out there who don't have a single sounding board, a single other person. And there's certainly a church you can walk into and talk to a pastor, and there'll be a person who will totally hear you out. But that doesn't feel the same as somebody who knows you and knows the person you lost or understands the grief or the sexual assault or whatever it is that you're grieving that caused that trauma response in the first place.
And it might sound like a cop-out if someone's listening and they find themselves in that boat, but there is someone who knows you intimately,
right,
and was there through all of it, and who knows you in that way, who's waiting for you to ask for help.
It's either in 1st or 2nd Peter. There's chapter 2. I forget the exact chapter and verse, but it specifically says to rejoice in your suffering.
Yeah.
Because you get to understand how Christ suffered. How many other moments in life when we have that light bulb moment in any understanding, whether it's figuring out woodworking after you've been trying to get it done for the longest time, or whatever it is I'm studying or writing about at the time, or Elijah when he figures out math, or I guess more Scarlet when she figures out math, because Elijah kind of
figures out a stick flex on a slap shot.
Right, when he figures out a slap shot. That moment of, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
It's such a relief and almost a peace. When you, as a believer, go, oh, I'm starting to understand the real pain, the true, deep, visceral pain that Christ suffered. And we don't even come close.
I was going to say.
There's a gratitude for what he did for us. If God can give his one and only son, I think that we can make it through losing anyone.
Yeah.
Honestly, and I know it's easy to say that out loud now because it's been years for me, but I have lost a lot of people, and I'm on the other side of it now, completely able to say that God delivered me every single time, even if it took a longer time. And it took a longer time because I was on my plan over and over and over. I wasn't putting God at the helm like we recently spoke about.
Well, and there's something too, like when you were pregnant with Emerson, that was when, and I want to get back to talking about this season of life, season of the year and season of life, and how we were talking about slowing down and how that's a good thing in our thoughts, but this time of year forces people to slow down to an extent that makes them feel depressed and alone and things. So I want to make sure we come back to that before we close out. But in 2016, when you were pregnant with our firstborn, Emerson, that's when I had my first panic attack. That's also when I found out I was losing my career. I was getting out of the military after a bajillion knee surgeries, literally.
A literal bajillion. I'm gonna keep this recorded. Being that I'm always.
I have a pet peeve for over exaggeration, and here I am.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So that's when I had my first panic attack. Shortly after that, I got on like short-term prescriptions for anti-anxiety, right? Not like dailies, like narcotic.
Yeah.
Right, like Ativan. I don't remember the other one they gave me.
I was gonna say, I think you've been on a different. They change your spices around.
Yeah, I've had most of the flavors.
Recipe.
They've never given me the delayed release ones, like Xanax.
Yeah.
It's like a delayed release. I've never tried it. I don't know. Maybe I did in high school, but not prescribed. The medication takes a long time. Like it lasts all day.
Yeah.
The time release benzodiazepines. The ones they gave me kick in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a pill,
Right.
not like a just in case pill,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like a this is an emergency right now
Right.
pill. And so the first time I ever took those was in 2016. I didn't come off of them until 2023.
Yeah.
You said something earlier about science and faith, and how you know that God created the science, or allowed us to create this, that God's hand is in science, right? And I fully believe that. And now I do think there's a personal conviction, and I watched a video earlier today on how personal convictions are not universally applicable, but for me, my personal conviction, I had to come to a point where I realized I can never grow. I can never leave the moment in time, because obviously that first prescription was low, and it was just like, oh, we don't really know what's happening. But after Emerson, after real loss, after getting out of the military, after Scarlett's diagnosis, after all these things, my prescriptions went through the roof, both in frequency and in strength. And it became all day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, medication, around the clock, zombie world. I came to realize that some parts of medical science can be used as a crutch until you can figure it out with the Lord. But for me, 7 years into a benzodiazepine prescription that was a life sentence, it was never going to stop, wasn't addressing the problem. It was suppressing the symptoms, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was never, the goal medically was never to heal me, right? It was to manage me. Right. And God is sufficient, right? His spirit is sufficient. His strength is enough, but it requires us to ask. It requires us to go to the source of our strength and ask for it. Yeah. And then when it's given, receive it openly. Yeah. And I was in a point in my grief journey, I guess, where it was easier when I felt that overwhelming. I knew I had this little pill that my doctor gave me that if I took in 10 minutes, I wouldn't feel it anymore. I wouldn't have to deal with it. I wouldn't have to feel the pain. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have to go down that road. Right. I could just shut off. And maybe in 4 or 5 hours, I need to take another one. Right. So I say that to say that I'm not anti-medication, and I'm not anti-treatment at all. I think that all medical things, most medical things, to be careful there, have a time and a place. Right. But at the end of the day, unless you are in some kind of chronic, crazy pain, your life shouldn't be numb by narcotics. Right. For peace. Right. If you're not going to the source of peace himself. Right. Yeah, there's something else I was going to touch on there. Oh, earlier when you were talking about emotions, and you said grief, and the very next thing you said was love, and I don't even think you said a third one. And the rest of the time you were talking, I was thinking about how closely related grief and love are, and how actually they're the exact same thing. And I didn't think about that, because one feels positive, one feels negative, but grief is love, right? And so as you were talking, every time you said grief, I was plugging love in to see if the sentence still made sense. But that's why it hurts different, right? Because explain love to somebody.
It's electric, which also requires a positive and negative charge.
No, I mean fully. If someone said, Cass, I think I love him. How do I know? You might ask some questions, right? But truly, is it provable? Factually. Right. No, love isn't tangible, right? And so how do we put parameters? Are you gonna okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought I was gonna say, were you gonna make that about Jesus? The love being tangible part. Excuse me.
Oh no, but that's
right. I thought that you were gonna hit me that. I was like, all right.
No.
But grief, in the same right, can't fully be defined. You could define it, you give it a definition, but you can't encapsulate it. You can't quantify it. You can't put a timeline on it. You can't really grasp it. You can't wrap your head fully around it the same way you can't love, because it's the same thing. One is the celebration aspect of it, right? I guess, Because, I mean, even Jesus' death on the cross was love, and that wasn't positive in the moment for him.
It's positive now.
But it's positive now. And grief, while it hurts because there was love. There is love, right? And that's why, because it's not past tense.
Right.
It's love still, but it's no longer bi-directional in that moment, right? Like with a person, obviously, like in the example of Jesus, it was, but that doesn't count because he didn't say that. But like, my baby died. I had something I loved that I looked at that loved me back. Or at least I hope she did. She's a baby. And then she died, and I still have all this love, and I have nowhere to put it. But like, it's still there. And I think it's love without an outlet. The love doesn't stop, right? And so now you have this love, and you're just holding it, and it hurts to hold it. You're not supposed to.
So I think that goes back to our triangle there, where I grew up in a household where it was repeated daily that love is a choice. Love is not the emotion. You have an emotion, especially when you first meet somebody. It's the infatuation, the attraction, whatever. You have a child, and even then, I created this human. It's like a borderline obsession, at least for me. Like when I see my babies at first, I especially, and even now, grab Elijah's giant tall face, and I see my baby in that face. Yeah. But we have that feeling. We feel a connection, which sparks the thoughts, and then we choose in our actions to love them. We choose to serve them.
That's fair, because if you've watched the news long enough, you've seen parents have done some pretty obscene things.
Right. Then there's been horrible things, and then they cry and say, no, but I loved my baby. Well, okay, but you choose not to in that moment. Right. Clearly you had emotions about your baby. You had some great thoughts about your baby, but then your baby made you mad.
When it came time to action.
Right. Yeah. So love is a choice. Christ dying on the cross was a choice. He allowed that to happen.
I made a video on this. It actually got flagged by the platform that I spend the most time on posting. The night I posted it, it was maybe 2 hours in, and a bunch of people had seen it and were commenting that it was impactful, and it got flagged by the system. It got put in a different category, and people can't see it anymore. But it was about that. I was offering perspective, because we often in Christianese, we talk about Jesus dying on the cross in a manner that's like saying the sky is blue.
Yeah, it loses impact when you...
There's no impact. Yeah. People will say like, oh yeah, I mean, the rug's red, the sky's blue, Cass is my wife, Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and we have 2 dogs. It's just a statement we say. And I think maybe the longer you've been, like maybe if you grew up in it, you're just so used to it that you're kind of numb to it. In conversationally anyway. Yeah. But we were doing a Bible study, and I don't know, I was like in my feelings or something, but we were doing a Bible study, and somebody said it, and they just breezed right through it like that. And I was like, can I say something to you just for a second? And this is that Bible study interjection made the next day's video, because I couldn't stop chewing on it. I grabbed our daughter's urn, and I went over in the kitchen, and I set up my phone on a tripod so I could use my hands, and I said, the next time somebody says Jesus died on the cross for our sins, I want you to think about something. Like, I watched my daughter take her last breath. I watched the EMTs try to make sure she had electrical signals from her heart. I watched the doctors use epinephrine and the defibrillator. I watched them try everything. And I remember sitting there wishing anything, I would trade anything, anybody, to keep her alive in that moment. Right. I would have killed the whole world for 5 more minutes with my kid. I know the pain of watching your child fight for their life, and knowing what I would be willing to do to change it. So in context, as Jesus is on the cross, he has a crown of thorns sticking into his head. He's been whipped 40-something times. His whole back is ripped open and bleeding. Stabbed in the side. People are sticking vinegar rags in his mouth just to mock him. The Bible says that God actually had to turn his face away from it. Yeah. Like, it was such a grieving, traumatic event that God himself couldn't watch. and he didn't stop it. And I think back to that moment where I'm watching Emerson on the table. And like legitimately, I don't think there's like one crime I wouldn't have signed up for to commit if it meant saving her. And like I wasn't saved, right? But
yeah.
And God could have not even had to snap his fingers. He could have just made it all stop. And he didn't.
Yeah.
For individuals, right? Not for all our sins, yes, but like for you.
Yeah.
For me. For literally like Scott on the other side of the phone, for Barbara, well, like all of them. He watched the pain and was like, no, it's worth it for them.
Yeah.
And so that video got flagged for maybe the extreme talk about death.
Might have been the urn.
Might have been the urn.
Video.
But either way, I thought we glazed right over it.
Yeah.
Before we close this out, getting back to the Januaries of our lives, maybe it's not grief of loss. Maybe it's just partial isolation. Maybe it's just the house is too quiet. The world is too quiet. There's not enough going on. I can't get outside and do my hobbies. I'm stuck in my own head. How do we get out of that? How do we see the Marches and the Aprils of life in the January? How do we look forward to it? And I think as believers, we have hope. We have trust. We know the plan, right? And like we know that mountaintops are for very short-lived experiences and memories and good views. But like all of our real growth as believers, as like pretty much every book of the New Testament tells us, happens in that valley season, in the Januaries, when life isn't at its highest point, right? We welcome trials and adversities and all these things so that our faith can mature and so that we can grow in this sanctifying way to become who God would have us be. So there's hope in the Januaries. But in the moment, the disdain, the bleak, the mundane, when those ideations kick on for some people, how do we get through it?
Well, I think if you're, I keep saying I think, we're looking at the cold and the bleakness as a negative thing. God created all 4 seasons for a reason. And this season, every year, much like the many seasons in our life, require us, depending on where you live, I suppose, to slow down. All of the plants that flourish outside have to be taken down to this to flourish by spring and summer. When we actually take the time to be grateful for being able to be slow for a minute and use that time to really reflect on our own growth, I think that the sentence is no longer, it's lonely and it's cold and I'm stuck here. It's, I get to be here and I can be cuddled up and warm while I think on what's to come, what is to grow in the future. I'm excited to see this growth. And it's funny, really, because we all want the summer, we want the warmth when it's cold, but then we get to the summer and we're all complaining that we're sweating and we're sticky. And even in, it's metaphorical, but in the winter, you have closeness with family. If I stand even remotely near you in the summer, you're already sweating. It feels like your eyes are open. So I don't get to be close to my husband in the summer because he's dripping from every ounce of him. But that's really God gave us the winters to slow down. Slow down.
Rest is biblical too, right? In the club, the Canadians started this, the different Canadian charters, but they call winter wrenching season. So we call spring, summer, and fall riding season, right? Like for Abby, I don't have to explain why it's called riding season.
Got it.
But people in like southern U.S. will say, "Oh, riding season's over. Can't wait till next riding season." And like there's just this dead space between when riding season ends and the next riding season starts, and it's just nothing though. And the Canadians started calling it wrenching season. Yeah. They're like, let's not act like there's 4 or 5 months out of the year where we're not doing what we love.
Right.
And they'll, whatever their monthly meetups, they'll have, let's go over to this one guy's house. Let's all tow our bikes over and whatever things that we need to work on to make sure our bikes are good for next riding season, we do them. And even if we don't actually have anything we have to do, let's still get the bikes together and, you know, upgrade something or look at this or practice doing basic motorcycle stuff. But like, in the way I'm thinking about it, right, the second is like the motorcycle's like our bodies, right? In that if you don't slow down, if you don't get rest, if you don't take that Sabbath, you will run ragged. Burnout culture is so real. So taking the wrenching season on your own body,
right,
on your own mind, and in your marriage to actually have time to pour in, if you're married, right, to be able to pour in to your first ministry, to the things that the Lord has trusted you to steward well. It's so easy in the hustle and bustle of the summer and in the fall to kind of lose.
I don't think anyone's ever said hustle and bustle for summer.
I'm saying the go though, right? Like we're going on vacation. The kids have practices. Like it's summer is the time that people put their whole year's worth of plans into
the vacations.
Right, and so by the time summer's over, it's easy to go, oh my gosh, I didn't do all the basics. I neglected my normal responsibilities, whether that's as a spouse or as a parent or as a friend or whatever. Like summer just comes and goes, 3 months of your life's gone. And so like taking that wrenching season and really being intentional, right? Like you said, like our proximity in the winter, even just like the time of watching TV or whatever, like we're choosing to do it together and there's not outside competing priorities to the same level.
Right. Well, that go, while it's fine and all, because we feel warm and fine to move outside and just, and granted, I mean, you live up here, you get used to moving outside in any other weather, but it goes back to that heightened emotion, to thoughts, and if you don't let everything calm, heightened emotion generally doesn't lead to anything good.
Yeah.
Right? You start to make decisions and have thoughts that are outside of your control. You let anger become hate. All of these any feeling that you have then becomes extreme if you don't slow it down. So grief, the winter, all of those pieces of our life that stop us in our tracks sometimes for a purpose, for refinement. If you're working with the lathe and what's the tool called that you use with the chisel? If you have your chisel on the wood and you're going back and forth, if you just go real fast, is it going to have the same effect as if you stayed slow in one spot and you're refining it. So the same thing is happening. If we're slowing down, if we're winterizing ourselves, we can start to see all the sides of the grief that are the same as the love. And the grief becomes a choice too. You have sadness. You don't have to feel grief forever. You feel the sadness. You choose to keep grieving at that point. You know, in the past, it was like known to wear. I happen to be wearing all black. It wasn't on purpose.
Tear your burlap.
But you wear your black for a season after somebody dies, right? And
sorry,
it was
like Old Testament.
Yeah, you went real old. I just like
you meant like
we can do that too. Whatever, all the traditions. But the point there is burlap. Where are we going with this? I love you. The winterizing of all of the thoughts and emotions that get so spiraled. You know, people say, I'm spiraling out. Why is that a sentence? Oh, because it actually starts to go. So it's to a point where you're not using logic anymore. So feel your sadness. And I still feel it. During this conversation, I felt it. I have a sadness. I let myself feel it. Feel your emotion. Coping in any form to stop the emotion isn't actually stopping it at all. You're bottling it out somewhere, and it's somewhere else, and it's going to come out in another way.
Masking the symptoms.
Right. You're masking the symptoms. You're putting benzos on something that needs to just be a set of tears. Cry. That's it. Pray. I mean, give it to God.
One of the most impactful things I heard, I was at a rally for the club, and they were doing an altar call. And I didn't grow up in a church that did altar calls. And if they did, I don't remember it. But pretty much every major rally we have has an altar call, and there's always a handful of people at the altar. And I didn't really understand it at first, honestly, because the first couple rallies I went to was the same people at the altar at multiple rallies. Yeah. And I was like, dang, these people must be going through something, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't understand the concept of the altar, right?
Gotta give it to God.
Again today.
Every
again
day.
today. But like that's just it, yes.
That really is it.
You know, that is it. And so the speaker was inviting people to the altar, and I was kind of like towards the back, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, I believe in God, I don't need to go up there. Again, not really understanding, right? The eyebrows. And I had this wave over me. And I actually came home from this rally, and I apologized to you for our daughter's death. For my part of it. And like it was an accident, right? It was six. But like I hit it feels so out of place, but I'll come back to it.
Okay. Like I don't remember.
I went into the altar and I was like, I'm holding something. I'm holding guilt. I'm holding something against me about this, and I'm gonna leave it here, right? Like the what ifs, all of it. Yeah. Like I'm leaving it here, and like it's a carpet. It says steps in some church. It's not, you know, whatever. But it's symbolic. You're
actually at, right?
Right, symbolic. And what the speaker said to me was something along the lines of, as Christians, we're pretty good at laying things down. We're pretty good at laying things down at the foot of the cross, right? We've been taught to do that. But the problem is that we like to go back and pick them up.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
And I was like, what was that?
That's it.
And he was like, when you're down here, when you're laying this at the foot of the cross, ask Jesus for the strength every day to not go back for it. Yeah. He said too many times we set it down, and then we're like, all right, God, you got that. But a week goes by, we're like, maybe I'll just hold on to that for a minute. Yeah. And slowly, Jesus is like, I'm carrying, I got it. I got it. And we're like, no. And we make the choice to take it back. And he's like, so whatever you lay at the foot of the cross today, don't go back for it. I was like, all right. And so I got home, and like, not that I have guilt in our daughter's death, right? But the conversation was like, hey, you have got, like with me, you have done the, well, what if I did this different? What if this circumstance had changed? What if that, like you what if'd? And I just kind of, And I'm like, so like, from my aspect, I'm sorry too. I what if too. Yeah. You know, anything that any what if scenario that involves me, I own that too. Any irresponsibility, any what if, I own too. Right? And like together, let's set that down. Right. And it's hard because the calendar will bring you back and make you want to pick it back up again. Yeah. That birthday will come, or that death day will come. And you start walking back over to the cross like, you still got it? Because I can take it for a day. Right. And Jesus is like, I got it. Yep. Right. But I think to sum all this up, in the Januaries of our lives, we have to, if we haven't already, we have to set whatever it is down at the foot of the cross and ask Jesus daily, hourly, or by the minute if necessary to keep holding on to it for us. And he is, but just for ourselves to hear it. I set this down. I'm not coming back for it. You got it. You got it. Yeah. I'm not taking it back. I refuse. You said that your yoke is easy and your burden is light, and I trust that. So you have to carry this for me. You promised. And that should, in my mind, get us through the Januaries, get us through the grief, even if it takes a while. And I think another closing thought is that grief isn't linear. Just because you're grieving and you put it at the foot of the cross doesn't mean you won't feel sadness. Like you said, there's a difference, and that was great how you said that. There's a difference between allowing yourself to feel the God-given emotion of sadness and choosing to carry grief, because those are two different things.
They are. When I feel like picking it back up, though, I often wonder if it's for a purpose for someone else. If that makes any sense. When I almost feel like I'm being tested. You know, are you going to be really upset about this today? Or are you going to let this ruin your whole day? Whatever reminder of my mother, Emerson, or whoever. It's usually not long after that I end up talking to somebody who needed some sort of something. Yeah. And it sometimes it's a nice little reality check that we all live life. We really live life. until we're done living, right? And everyone has to be done at some point.
That's a t-shirt. We live life till we're done living.
That's it. Pretty much sums it up. But no, I think it's so necessary that we remember that we can be sad,
yeah,
without carrying the grief as and using as a crutch to take the benzos or drink the extra drink or be grumpy to people. It is
or
one
check out, not care anymore.
Right. But and I'm guilty of it. So I'm saying this as someone who, that was my, well, she just lost her mom. Just give her, But I was snippy, and I had the number of times I had to come back to the kids and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take that out on you. I didn't mean to be so snippy with you. The number of apologies is uncountable at this point, because I let it go from an emotion to a thought to an action where I reacted towards someone.
Sure.
Or you reacted and took a benzo. Whatever it is, when we take the sadness, feel the feeling. And then you put it at the cross, and when you have that feeling like you want to pick it up, say, how can I use this to help somebody today? How can I sharpen someone else's iron? How can the iron I'm carrying sharpen someone else's? And I think that's part of the healing.
Yeah.
When I see somebody blessed by my healing, I feel more healed. Their peace becomes my neosporin, if you will.
How Jesus feels.
Yeah.
Bro, his pain and suffering, the grief he felt when he watches what someone come to him does in their lives. Yeah. Imagine the joy it brings him. The Bible tells us that when someone turns back from their sins and starts to follow Jesus, that the angels in heaven rejoice. Yeah. There's an angel party when people come to God. Imagine how Jesus himself feels, watching it happen and feeling his grief and his sadness in that moment be worth it.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think this is it.
You want to pray us out?
Sure. Oh, Heavenly Father, first and foremost, thank you for a godly wife. Thank you for somebody with patience who's been able to stick with me through the January seasons of my life and who has helped me grieve and navigate all of the twists and turns that this life has brought. Thank you for somebody who's willing to stand by me in the fire until I saw that you were there with both of us too. Lord, thank you for technology and for this ability to be able to use the testimony that you have given us to reach other people. Father, I pray that you give us the strength and the wisdom and the courage to continue to do this as long as you would have us do it. And Father, we thank you for all of our blessings. We pray that you watch over everyone watching this. You watch over our children, watch over our families, and you remind us, Father, that once we have learned the lesson that we need to learn from the weight that we're carrying, remind us to set it down and that you'll carry it for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Love you.
Love you.